Welcome back to the class. In this lesson, we're going to finish designing the hero section. Previously, we created the structure for it with the grid, the logo, navigation, and background. Now it's time to add the content. So let's get started. The hero content, if we look at the wireframe, is comprised of a media object, which can be image, video, whatever, and a title, subtitle, and then some call to action. We have this button and this link, which probably just takes to a pop-up video, I imagine. To make things easier for us, let's select all of these elements. And actually, let's select this entire group where it says content. And I'm just going to paste it in here. So now, let's tackle the heading first. And here's a quick tip for you. If you want to select an element that's inside a group, normally you would need to select the group and then double click to enter inside the group. But if you want to do that without double clicking, you can hold down Command on Mac or Control on Windows. And that will allow you to click and select any element regardless of how deep it is in the layer structure. So for the heading, we're going to change its color to white. And then we're going to go back to our typography and we're going to use the style of heading 1. Now, you can glance over these values and commit them to memory and then replicate them on the other side. Or you can right click, go to copy paste, copy properties. And then you can go back to main design, right click, copy paste, paste properties. So that will change everything. The font family, weight, the font size, the line height, all of it. So now all you have to do is basically change the color back. And let's bring up the grid. Let's align this to the grid. And we're going to change the width of this element so that it spans on 7 columns. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Next, let's target this bit. And for this, let's go back to typography and select a style that would work best for us. And in our case, we'll probably be using heading 5. So right click, copy paste, copy properties, go back and paste properties. Now this doesn't really work that well in medium, so let's switch back to regular. You can make these changes, no problem. And let's resize this as well. And let's actually change to auto width. That means the text box will resize to the maximum width of the text inside it. Let's switch its color to white and let's use a more subdued tint, 60%, let's say. Awesome, we're making great progress. Now, let's look at this button. For this button, I want the text to say download for free, but I would also like a nice arrow to sit right next to it. And I'm going to show you an amazing way of creating buttons in Figma that allows you to type any text you want in them and they'll resize automatically. And that's with the help of our trusty friend Auto Layout. So what I'm going to do is select the text itself, and I'm actually going to move this outside, and I'm going to ungroup this. So with the text selected, press Shift-A to add Auto Layout, and I'm going to select 32 pixels horizontal padding, 16 pixels vertical padding, and 16 pixels spacing between items. Now what I can do is I can add a fill color. And I'm going to add fill white 100%. And I'm also going to add a 100 pixel corner radius. Do you know why I did that? Because if we're going to take a look at the project brief, under design considerations, the client tells us that, hey, we like pill and ghost buttons. And a pill button is the one with very rounded corners. It looks like an actual pill. So with that done, I can select the text inside it and I can set it to my primary color. So let's go to colors, select my primary. Let's come back and paste it in. Now, as far as the text is concerned, we're going to use Brandon Grotesque. And let me actually zoom in here. We're going to use bold, 18 pixels, 24 for line height, and we should be good to go. Now, I'm also going to add a drop shadow to it. So I'm going to select my frame, which I'm going to call button, and under effects, I'm going to choose drop shadow, the same one that we used for these elements here. The last thing that we need to do here is to add a nice arrow. And for that, I'm going to go to my app here. I'm going to search for arrow, and we're going to choose the arrow right from the My Cons set. So click and drag and drop it in. Here, we're going to keep it at 24 pixels, and I'm going to hit Command X. I'm going to select this text and Command V, or Control V if you're on Windows. And this is going to paste it right next to that text inside my button frame. All I got to do now is change the color to the same color as the text. And here, I'm going to give you another pro tip. When working in Figma and you want to change the color on multiple elements, you can select the parent element, and where you see selection colors, this will basically give you the colors of every single element in that selection. So if I want to change the color of this arrow to the color of this text, all I got to do is copy the color of the text, paste it in, and I'm good to go. All right. So now our button is complete. And because I'm using auto layout, I can change the text on this button like so, and the button will resize automatically. How cool is that? And of course, I can also change the padding and the distance between items. I can do this. And I can do this. And I can do this. Well, that was a very large value, but you get the point. I get very fine control over how this looks like, and it's super easy to use. Now, let's see about this video introduction link. For it, I'm going to be using my secondary color. So let's select that, copy it, paste it in. Typeface, we're going to use Brandon Grotesque again, 18, 24, and bold. And the last thing to do is add a little icon to it as well, because I wanted to show the fact that, hey, if you click this link, a video is going to play. So we need an icon that says play. So we have this one, or if we go to Ion Icons, we will get this one. So drag and drop. This I'm going to resize to 24, like so. And I'm going to select the icon and the text. And I'm going to press Shift A to create an auto layout. Now, when doing this, you can align elements in a number of different ways. So if the auto layout was horizontal, you can align elements at the top, center, or bottom. If your auto layout is set to vertical, you can align elements left, center, and right. So this is what it's doing. And you can also choose to move up an element or move down. And of course, if the layout is in horizontal mode, you can move elements left and right. You can also use the keyboard shortcuts, left, right, top, bottom. So in my case, I'm gonna choose to align this icon in the middle and also this text in the middle. And as for distance between items, I'm gonna choose 16 pixels, and I'm gonna make sure that I'm using the same color on this icon. Right, so now what you can do is you can group up these two elements with auto layout. So you can press Shift A, and that's gonna create another frame for both of them. And you can set its spacing between items to 32. And by default, this will align these elements in the middle. Now, I want the same distance between these three elements, right? So what I can do is I can select all of them by holding down Shift, and I can do Shift A to add auto layout. And I'm simply gonna change the distance between them, or the spacing between them, to 32. And also, I'm gonna make sure that all of these are aligned to the left, like so. Now, the last thing to do is to position this content at a respectable distance from the header. And in our case, it's 96 pixels, which incidentally is a multiple of 8. So I'm actually gonna keep this positioning. But if you want to position it differently, you would use the up and down arrow keys. Cool. Now, this is the first part of the content. The last part is to add this media object. So here's how we'll go about that. We're going to start by creating a simple shape, and we're going to add a border radius of 8, a height of 240 pixels. And what about the width? Well, for the width, you can go basically any width you want. But what I like to do is I like to use a 16:9 ratio. And I have a cool little plugin for that. It's called Aspects. And again, you can find this in the Figma plugins directory. Just search for Aspects and you'll find it. This allows me to select an element, choose an aspect ratio, and choose a property to resize based on that aspect ratio. In my case, I want to change the width because the height is set at its correct dimensions. So I'm going to hit apply, and this changed the width to 427 pixels. So now I have a perfectly sized shape for a 16:9 ratio. So with this selected, what I can do now is click it, and under Fill, select Image, choose Image, and I can open my landing page starter kit, go to Placeholder Images, and I can choose any of the images from this UI kit. So let's choose Main. Here you have several options for how the image behaves. You can choose between Fill, Fit, Crop, and Tile. In my case, I'm just gonna leave it on Fill. And then I'm gonna select this, and I'm gonna add a drop shadow, like so. So now what I wanna do is create a nice grid out of these images. So I'm gonna select, duplicate, and I'm gonna position this at 32 pixels from the other one, Let's duplicate again, 32 pixels. And let's do that again. And let's do that again. And let's do a third column, like so. So now let's go ahead and add some fresh images here. And you know what? Actually, to make it more interesting, here's what we'll do. We'll delete the top images here. And we're going to move these up like so. It just adds a little bit of more visual interest. So let's change the images now. When you have a rectangle or a shape with an image fill, you can actually double click it to open up the fill dialog. So let's choose another image, maybe this one, and let's do the same for the rest. All right, so once you're happy with the result, here's what you do. You select all of these and you go right here where it says components and select create component. Now, components in Figma allow you to reuse certain elements, and making any changes to the parent component will change the child components as well. So if I were to duplicate this component in another page and I would make changes to this master instance, those changes will be reflected in the other pages as well. Now that I have that turned into a component, I can select it and I can rotate it. And we're going to use the same 16 degrees rotation that we used on these elements. And remember this number, 16 degrees. We'll be using this quite often in the design of this page. So now it's rotated. I can move it in its final position. And this really is up to you and how you want it to look like. In my case, I'm probably just going to leave it something like that. Or something else I can do is the following. I can change the image here to the main image. I can choose to hide this image completely. And I can even slide it in, something like this, and I can move it down so that the text here kind of interweaves with this image, and maybe a bit more like this. Again, this is a matter of personal preference, but I think that will look pretty good. Go ahead and fiddle with this, play around, see what looks best for you. Now, speaking of what looks best, take a closer look at this shadow. See how it's cut off right here? That's because when you're adding or when you're creating a frame with auto layout, it usually will check out this box where it says clip content. And that will basically clip any content that is outside the boundaries of that frame. In our case, the shadow is outside the boundaries. So I can uncheck this, and then we can go in even deeper and uncheck this box. And now, see how the shadow is showing up? This is something you can do when you see this happening. When an image that should be outside the bounds of your frame doesn't show up, usually this is the culprit right here. All right, so there is one final small thing that we need to do here. Right here at the bottom, we're going to add a little icon that will let users know that, hey, you can scroll down this page. So to create that, start with a rectangle. We're gonna set its width to 24, its height to 48, its radius to 100. And we're actually gonna remove the fill color, and we're gonna add a stroke or a border. And the border is gonna be white. It's gonna be inside 1 pixel. And then inside that, we're gonna create a nice circle using the ellipse tool. So when using the ellipse tool, you can freehand it, or you can hold down Shift, and it's gonna snap to the same width and height. So let's make this like very small, 6 by 6 should do the trick. Fill white, and then just move it inside my my little icon here. You can set it at 8 pixels from the top. That should do the trick. Select both, Command G to group them all together, and name it scroll or whatever you want it to be. So now let's bring up the grid and let's align it to the grid. Oops. Like so. Obviously, you don't have to align it to the grid. If you feel it looks better in a particular position, like so, you can do that, no problem. Just because we're using a grid, it doesn't mean that we have to align every single thing to it. So that is the finished hero section. All right, so now it's your turn to finish the hero section. If you've already done that, fantastic. If not, go ahead, watch this lesson again if you have to, and complete this section. Now, you'll find that, and this is something very interesting I've been meaning to tell you, you'll find that in most cases, the hero or the header part of a website is the most difficult one to make. I don't know why that is, but usually once you get it done, it's just smooth sailing from that point on. I think it's because after you complete the header or the hero section, you have a foundation to build on, right? You have a starting point. So I think mentally just makes it easier for you to get things going. Anyway, we're now ready to move on. And the next section on our list is the first section for features. So we'll tackle that in the next lesson. See you there.